Hi guys, I am going to do just a quick peek before sunset. There's a couple things I've been doing, and I don't know. I thought, why am I not telling people while I'm doing it? I don't know. Okay, so here's some things in the protected fenced onion / carrot garden. This keeps the littles from really getting in there, and the chickens from getting in there too. I have my onions in here, and I have onions here, and I have onions here, and I grew them alongside the carrots. It's bedtime for all the chickens. They're trying to figure out their pecking order. All right, hopefully that worked. I'm growing them alongside the carrots. The carrots I grew from carrot tape, and they just look so healthy. They're well spaced. I never had to thin them. I just had to make sure they kept watered. Now root crops are carrots and onions. Onions are bulbs, but they grow underground. They need a lot of water. Carrots they grow underground. They need a lot. So as I was walking around the garden, I figured I would check and see how these carrots are doing. They're looking phenomenal. They're well spaced. We don't eat a ton of carrots. I like to dehydrate them so we can add them to stews or pot pie or, soups. And I thought, Tam, you should look and see how they're doing. The way I check to see if my carrots are ready is, are the stalks really thick? This one, yes, very thick. This one, not so thick, thin. Then I check to see, can I feel the shoulders? So I take my fingertip, kind of guess what kind of size it is before I yank it out of the ground. This one is a little bit bigger than my thumb as far as width goes. And you see what the stem looks like here, and then what the stem looks like here. Now check this one out. I reburied it so I can show you. Look at that. Look at that. That's huge. That's like wider than my thumb knuckle. You know, the first bone of my thumb. That's huge. Huge. So this one could be picked very easily. I grew short and sweet because this bed is kind of short. It's only about 6 inches tall from the ground. So I wanted to make sure that they come out in a good, good shape and stuff. But I'm going to save this one for a minute. I don't want to take it out yet. But see, there's thick stems versus thin stems. And again, just put your finger in, feel the shoulders of the carrot and see if it's ready for you to pull it. If you just want baby carrots, maybe you're pulling your young carrots as you're thinning them. But like I said, I did this from carrot tape that I made at home. Super easy. I've got a couple videos on that. And I did not ever have to thin them. So let's see. Let's guess. These stems, kind of thin. I did not look at this yet, so I'm doing this for the first time here. Put my finger in. I feel the soil's a little dry, even though we had a lot of rain and we had like misty rain. I could pull that, probably. I'm not gonna yet, but I could. This one is pretty woody. Let's see. But it's still kind of young. I'm gonna wait on that one. This one, very woody. It almost looks like parsley here. I bet you $1 it's ready. Oh my gosh, it's also very large. It could come out. And like I said, I'm leaving them in the ground until I'm ready to pull them. So some of these big ones I could pull shortly. I could even start more seeds for carrots. I could start more carrot tape at some point. And I tried to plant them with the onions to keep critters away. Now the critters that would come for carrots, carrot flies like to come and lay their eggs, and then the maggot things grow into the carrots in the ground, which is gross. So I try to disguise them with the scent of the onions and the shape of the onions a little bit. Last year I did like carrots, onions, carrots, onions. That worked out really, really well too, because the onion bulbs are very thin. I mean, they're very like shallow rooted, very shallow rooted, just in the soil, just a little bit, versus the carrots, which go down straight down. The carrot leaves capture water and keep the soil shaded to try to block out weeds. I've got some weeds here, but not too many. So that's exciting. And then I have heard it said from M.I. Gardener to trim your onions. So I'm just doing an experiment to see what these are going to turn out like. Let's see what happens. So the ghost in the back, that is my Brussels sprouts. I noticed they were getting tall, and I had them on these shorter posts, and they were getting cramped. So just now, I opened up the sacred mesh to see how they were. There were no cabbage moths in sight. On the bottoms of the leaves were some holy leaves, so I just clipped those off. But you're supposed to do that with Brussels sprouts anyway. What they say is, I love Brussels sprouts, especially the fresh ones. What they say is you're supposed to make it, it'll end up looking like a palm tree. You keep taking the lower leaves off, and it gives energy to the sprouts that way instead. That's what they said. Those people who say things that are experts. Cabbage moths are really annoying because they will search anywhere for a hole, anywhere. So I'm kind of looking at this part over here. I did not weight it down. They would actually go through this little section here, wiggle their way in so they can lay their eggs. So I don't like that very much. I'm going to I have some bonsais hiding out here, so they still get rain but shade. And I'm just going to lay that on top of there so that that doesn't, so they can't get in there as easily. Just weight it down a little bit. Yeah. Otherwise, I have them held by clips from Harbor Freight. Nice cheap clips that are nice and strong though. And so that's the ghost in the background. I put in a sage plant. It was literally like maybe an 8-inch pot last fall. I just stuck it in the corner and it's doing great. This carrot grew from last year. I had several in the other bed as well. And this is another experiment. I'm going to try, I don't think I'm going to do all of these, let all of these grow. But I'm going to try collecting seeds from the carrots. And I may not have to buy carrot seed next year if I can collect them. And again, I don't know if I'm going to keep all of them and let all of them go to seed. What I heard is once you plant carrots, if you leave a couple to go to seed, you won't have to plant carrots again ever. That's what I've heard. So another one of those annuals with value that just keep reseeding themselves over and over and over again. Let's see, artichoke in the middle. It's a little bit yellow. Might need some fertilizer. And I have liquid fertilizer I can add to it. The garlic tips are getting a little bit brown. They're nearing the end of their life cycle. And at some point I'm going to pull them. There's onions in the back that are, ooh, look at that. Look at this one here. It's folding over. The leaves are folding over. I could pull that now, probably. Let me see those. These here that I'm experimenting with, that whole row here is red onions. These are all white onions. And I love to get onion starts now from Dixondale bulb. They come pretty quick. They come packed well, ship well, and they're pretty healthy. But let's look at this guy over here that's got his leaves folding over here. Ooh, look at that. And now if I come down here, I see a weed. I'm gonna pull that weed out without lifting up my mesh. But oh my goodness, look at that onion. Let's see, what's the reference point? 3 fingers wide. It's about 4 inches, maybe 4 inches in diameter. I'm gonna pull him. I'm actually gonna pull him now. So the rest of them, can see how close it is? Can you see how close it is to this one? Once I pull this one out, this one has more room to expand. And pull him out. Ooh, look at that, look at that. And look at the shallow, shallow roots. That's what I was talking about. Super shallow roots. That's why the onions go really well with the carrots. The onions conceal the carrot's presence from the carrot fly. and from swallowtail caterpillars, which if you want swallowtails, that's a great thing to use as carrots. But then the carrots grab the water that comes down, doesn't let it run off, and gives it to the bulbs. So they coexist very happily. You can also, with onions, you can cut these up as green onions and use them immediately in recipes, or dehydrate them, or freeze them and use them later for an onion flavor, like you would chives. But these are kind of yellowy, so I may not use these. I might use some of the more green ones for greens. And when I chopped these onions up, I could easily when I cut their heads off at the top, I could have easily chopped them up and used them in recipes. All right, so this yellow onion is going to be delicious. Just have to figure out how to remember to take it in. That's what I do sometimes. See, I've got things like on my fences, which fences are awesome. So these fences are just like 3 by 4 inch garden fencing. It's 4 foot tall, held on with U posts. They call them U posts because they're shaped like a U at the top. If you look at them, shaped like a U. And then I made a janky gate, but it works. Keeps buddies out, keeps the chickens out, etc. But I like to use them, like I've got a hook here. I like to use them to put things on, like what do I have on here? I have scissors on here. Obviously I have the hoops. These old hoops, I gotta remember to take them in. They're the smaller hoops. I could take my onion and just lay it here for now. So this reminds me, it's near the door. It will remind me to take it in. And whatever you got to do. I don't have diagnosed ADHD, but I know that tips like this help me a lot. Just remember to bring it in, because I don't want it to get all wet. I'm going to let this dry naturally. I'm not even going to wash it. I'm going to let it dry naturally. I'm going to, once it dries up really well, very, very well, all of these leaves need to dry off. They're going to look like, they have to look like this, really. They got to be really crinkly. What that means is that the center part then is nice and dry as well. Because then you snip it and you snip off the roots. You don't do it yet. Off, it's very, very dry inside, so this will store well. If I cut it now and cut these roots off now, I basically need to use it right now, or put it in the fridge and use it within a couple weeks. But if you want to store the onions, like in your fruit cellar, your root cellar, whatever it might be, you need to wait till this dries out really, really well, because if there's no moisture, bacteria can't form in there. You wait until the roots dry out really well. Right now they feel like pencil erasers, but they need to be so dry that you could just barely pull on them and they'll come off, or they'll be like so shriveled up it'll feel like almost like hair instead. So once it's totally dry, I'm going to snip it, and I'm going to brush off the dirt, and the outside skins will turn to paper as they dry too. And again, that helps you with storage. Okay, so that's one onion. And I wanted to show you. And going back here, I'm going to make sure this is closed. That's covered up. One thing we do with onions to make them large is make sure that, like this one's really, really skinny, really small. Make sure that they have room to expand out. Kind of like if you put water in a container and you're going to freeze it, you got to leave a little air. And here, in this case, like I did with the carrots, I looked for the carrot shoulders. This time I'm going to feel down for the bulb. And I'm just going to make a little bit of loose soil circle around the bulb. Some people use a spoon and they actually call it spooning. And that lets the bulbs, again, have room to expand in the soil. And again, if you wanted to have like small onions for soups or stews or something, the new onions, you could pull them when they're really little. That's not a problem. Onions don't like weeds, so that's why I've got straw down. I use straw, not hay, because straw is not supposed to have seeds in it. So I'll pull that out. And you also have to be careful if you use straw for mulch about where you're getting it, because if they spray chemicals in their fields, like herbicides, or things like that, then that's going to be into the straw. And if you put the straw in your garden, it's not going to do as well for mulch. Same thing if you're using grass clippings for mulch. Make sure that it's not from a lawn that's been sprayed with insecticide, or not insecticide, with herbicide, or your garden is not going to do very well. All right, so here's one right here. Ugh, I did not get back from weed. Actually, I did weed maybe a week ago, but we had a lot of rain and heat. This one here, what would you do in this situation? I'm going to try first to spoon this side, so it's looser and it can go that way. You see where the roots are? Look at how shallow those are. See them? I'm going to spoon it a little bit this way. I'm going to spoon it a little bit this way on this side, because neither one of them really, I'm not really ready to pull either one of them yet. Now, if hubby makes something this week, I might pull that one and then let that one grow. Alright, so that's onions going on over here. Walking here. I try to cardboard the paths. Doesn't always work. Does not always work. I have a chicken run right next to the garden. That's where I like to toss weeds and prunings. They get everything except tomato prunings. I don't let the tomatoes go out there, which they don't really like anyway, so that's fine. These are shelling peas. Well, no, these are snow peas. These are snacking peas that I can break off and eat. Yum. And people say, Tam, what about the dirt? Little dirt won't hurt you. You should actually have some dirt in you. You can see they're kind of yellowing. So I probably, and there's not a lot of peas left. I came out about 3 days ago and took all the peas off that were here. So they're starting to die back, and that's their normal life cycle. That's fine. So with my peas, whether they're shelling peas or snow peas, once I see they're starting to fade, I will clip them right at the soil level. And where do you think I'm going to put them? Yeah, I'm going to clip them at the soil level, untangle them from the fencing, toss them to the chickens. They love pea leaves. Some people will actually take pea leaves, like some of these are still young and tender, they're not dried out. They'll clip them and they will use them in salads. I don't know, I've never tried them like that. I could. And then you don't feel like the plant is going to waste. But it's actually had a really good run. And peas, they don't grow real tall, typically. So this fencing is jank, too. It's recycled fencing. It's about 2 foot tall. And it's the same size. It's got 3x4s. And then I just took some slats, recycled some slats from our snow fencing. Real simple. And shoved them in the ground. And that's for peas. And that is just fine for peas. Now, our winds come from the west. They blow this way. If I put trellises this way, the wind's going to knock them down. That's just how it's going to be. That happens. But because I have them running east and west, they're not hurting anything this way. They're not going to get hurt by the winds at all. They also, because they're going up this way, like the peas are about done, but now I have cucumbers coming up. No, those are sweet pea flowers. Here's my cucumbers. But I also have some things that are going to grow up this way and are going to give some shade to the chickens. So the sun, June 21st, goes directly overhead. It comes from east, directly overhead to the west. As the summer progresses, so now the sun is a little bit further south in the horizon, just a little bit. So it comes east, and it kind of goes on a slant a little bit, just a slight slant, and it comes this way. So as the sun's rays are coming this way, these plants are providing shade this way. If I wanted to, I could have put this trellis in the middle of the bed here. And again, I'd get a little bit of shade from the sun's rays. By August, the rays are really coming like this. In winter, the rays are almost, you know, like that. in the wintertime. They're really coming from the south. That's why they say make sure your garden is facing south, because that's where you're going to get the most sun the most of the day, most of the time. But at any rate, what I was saying is, if I wanted to put this trellis in the middle of the bed, what do you think I could plant behind them in the shade? If you were thinking about lettuce, spinach, cilantro, anything like greens that doesn't like the heat, they would grow if they had a small trellis that provided them a little bit of shade. If I had sunflowers growing tall, again, the greens are going to go really, really, really well in the shaded part because it's cooler. It stays, the soil stays moist a little bit longer, and they don't have fruit that needs to set, and they don't need that full sun, which is actually typically 6 hours. Okay, so yeah, so I do have, so those are eating peas, delicious. These are sweet peas, never grew these before, and they're supposed to flower like pink and blue and white, is what I heard. And you see how well they're doing too. They are pretty shaded. They're kind of shaded. They're shaded by the onions a little bit. But the soil is nice and moist down here. My cucumbers, the cucumbers are starting to come up. They're going to go on the trellis. I've got some over there as well. They have flowers. So if I want my pollinators to see the flowers, I start sticking the leaves and the stems through the trellises to make sure the pollinators can see them. Well, Tam, how are your pollinators going to come all the way back here, you say? Well, you see, it's like this. These are all volunteer sunflowers. I did not start them from seed. They grew on their own. I transplanted them over here. Again, they're going to provide some shade for the flock. That water's nasty, I know. I got to dump it. It gets filled with rainwater off of that tarp. So I do need to dump it again before a good rain, so it's nice and clean. But these sunflowers I just transplanted, they grew on their own. Another annual of its value. They grew on their own. The sunflower heads are going to start attracting the pollinators once the flower starts blooming. The pollinators are going to see yellow. They're going to see colorful flowers. They're going to look all around for more colorful flowers. Because once they run out of pollen on one, I think, then they come to others. I don't know. I'm making that up. I would assume so. But I am going to draw them into this area of the garden by having flowers. So I have sunflowers there. I put some tiny little snapdragons, extra snapdragons I was growing down here. Snapdragons like it cool and moist. So being in shade of a sunflower should do really well. What I don't know about is I have heard that the sunflowers put off some kind of chemical in the soil that inhibits growth of some things. They also use a lot of nitrogen. Now they're right next to the chicken run, part of the chicken run. This is just part of it that you see. And there's a lot of chicken poo in here, which is a lot of nitrogen. And it's been building up over years and years and years. And it's going to, you know, be available to these plants. It's probably one reason why they're doing so well. So they do use a lot of nitrogen. They do use a lot of water from the soil itself. But they have a huge root system. It's basically the issue too. So it might crowd out some other things that you might want to plant in there. So anyway, sunflowers. Sunflowers, snapdragons down here. These, so those were left over that I seeded for customer. These cosmos were volunteers from the pupper garden over by the greenhouse. So I transplanted them here. They're going to grow up really tall too. Probably, I've seen some of the sunflower, or some of the cosmos grow so tall. But they're going to attract more pollinators. The finch love to get the seeds too. They're going to self-spread. Oh, stop. There's Vegas. Really? Really? He's very loud. He does this every night when we're out. Yeah, every night. It's like, look at me, look at me. Like we forgot about him somehow, which we did not. So I got cosmos there. I put some another volunteer sunflower in here, some chamomile, flat flower that the hoverflies really like flat flowers because they can get their little tongue in there. They don't have long ones like the other pollinators. And they eat aphids. So if you want to get rid of aphids or prevent aphids, then you want to attract hoverflies that will lay their eggs, and when the larva hatches, the larva will actually come and eat the aphids. They say they can eat like 200 to 300 aphids. One larva can eat like 200 to 300 aphids in 2 weeks. So that's pretty good. More snapdragons, just for color. I had a dahlia that I ordered and planted. I'm going to see how it grows. Have some parsley. I don't know what's going on with the branches. I would assume there's some kind of caterpillar eating them. But that's okay. I'm not harvesting that. More sunflowers that were volunteers. Again, so I'm attracting the pollinators to the areas that I want to be attracted. I do have more cucumbers here. I do have more peas, eating peas on the way out on this side. There's another pod. I won't eat that right now. Don't want to make you hungry. And what else do I want to tell you about this part? I don't know. Some strawberries, more strawberries from containers. They overwintered over in this area. I don't know. I guess if you got questions, ask me so I can tell you. Oh, a question came up about sunflowers. And sunflowers are going to follow the sun. So like I showed you, the sun goes from east to west across the sky this way. That's north and that's south. So if they follow the sun, their heads typically are going to be facing east, a little bit southeast. They're going to follow the sun through the daytime. And then they're going to face like southwest. So you can see here, that's what they're doing. They're facing west, westerly direction, and a little bit south. West and south. And somebody recently asked if you can make the sunflower change the way that they're facing. And that's just all in the planting. You have to think about where the sun is and then plant accordingly. They are tall, so typically you're going to put sunflowers toward the back of a garden so they don't block the light for the other things. Unless, again, you want to provide shade and you want a greens area that's really shady and cool for those. Okay, so, alright, so peas on the way out. These kale, this is their second year. And these kale know they're on their way out. They keep flowering, they keep flowering, they keep flowering because they know they just want to grow seeds. And I keep cutting off the seeds and handing them to the flock. And I cut the leaves off and hand them to the flock. And you can see there's bug damage on there, but I don't care because they're going to the flock. So that's fine. They're going to get the bug damage. I mean, they're going to get the worms. They're going to get any eggs that might be on there, and that's fine. But you can tell it knows because I cut these back probably 3 days ago, and they're already sending out more flowers. This is basically, it looks like almost like a broccoli. Kind of tastes like one. Here's one that's cut way back, way back. And I'll just let it keep coming up because, again, I'm going to give them to the flock. I have random bachelor buttons that came up on their own because I planted them last year here, which I did not know that they would do that. But I was also able to transplant a bunch of them out to the front yard, and they can just fill in like they like. Got more sunflowers over here. Just an experiment. These would provide shade from the west sun. So they're going to provide shade to this area for the chickens again. Again, I'm trying to think of natural ways for shading and protecting the flock and protecting the crops that I have. So, you know, look at these. Those artichokes are really green. Yeah, see what I can do. Maybe I can add more fertilizer. More onions on this side. More yellow onions. And I have been, you know, making room for them around the soil so they can expand. And interplanted, I have some beans. Just bush beans, not pole beans. Bush beans stay low to the ground but they're kind of hard to find, all the beans. Pole beans grow really tall, and the beans just kind of hang down from trellises, arches. And the other part with the sunflowers, look at that, that one's facing southwest. The other part with the sunflowers is they provide shade to the ground so that weed seeds don't sprout, because they need the warmth, the light, and the warmth and light and rain. And so the sunflowers not only keep the area dry underneath, but their root system kind of prohibits the weeds from forming, and it prevents the sun from getting down under there to get the seeds going. These are Swiss chard, second year. Again, I've been just cutting them off, and they're growing back like crazy. I can still use the leaves for these Swiss chard, even though they're bolting like crazy. I can still use the tender leaves, and I like to use those in Italian dishes. Here's another stand. There was that. Oh, I think that's one. Yeah, that's Swiss chard. But I do have spinach in there too. And these are not protected, so the bugs do come. So when I harvest them, I soak them in some vinegar water for about 10 minutes and then rinse them off, and I can use them and it's fine. Is that about it? Oh, I love these little guys. These little English daisies. And they like it wet too, and they like it moist and cool. So I tried to plant them like kind of underneath things also, like in the back here, just because I love them. I love them. I just think they're so cute. I've always loved them. So I add flowers now. So it's not just vegetables. Got some pineapple sage. These have the red tubular flowers that hummingbirds like, because again, I like to see hummingbirds. I don't want to do just one thing. So these flowering seeding kale, they attract the pollinators as well. So do the bachelor buttons. So do these cool snapdragons. Because again, I had extra snapdragons. I'm like, where am I going to put them? Why not put them in with the vegetables so they can attract the pollinators? So at any rate, this is the enclosed area I have with the onions, carrots. This is the very first bed I built. This was it. This is the very first thing we had on the property. This is before we had privacy fencing, before we had anything else going on, before we had chickens, was this bed. So